Spring in Madison, Wisconsin, 2008, carried the promise of renewal, but for Kristil Krug, 28, it would mark the beginning of a nightmare that would end her life. Kristil was known for her infectious laugh, warm demeanor, and devotion to helping those around her. She had recently started a small nonprofit assisting at-risk youth and balanced her career with caring for her younger sister, Megan, who was still in college. Her life to outsiders appeared orderly and fulfilled, but behind her cheerful smile, subtle shadows of tension lingered. Minor disputes with a coworker, whispers of financial disagreements, and the occasional unease she brushed off as stress. The day Kristil disappeared began like any other. She left her apartment early, dressed neatly for a presentation at a local community center. She had meetings scheduled back-to-back, each meticulously planned. Colleagues noted her focused energy, her habit of double-checking notes and presentations. By mid-afternoon, she was expected at a donor luncheon, a crucial event for her nonprofit's upcoming fundraising campaign. That was the last confirmed sighting of Kristil. By evening, concern had begun to ripple through her circle. Her sister, Megan, noticed Kristil hadn't returned a single call. Her coworkers, initially assuming a last-minute delay, grew uneasy when texts and voicemails went unanswered. Kristil's vehicle was found parked outside her apartment complex, doors locked, keys missing. There was no sign of forced entry, no struggle, only an eerie absence that suggested someone had carefully orchestrated her disappearance. The Madison Police Department opened an investigation immediately. Detective Marcus Hall was assigned as lead. Hall, known for his meticulous attention to detail, quickly sensed that this was no ordinary missing person case. Kristil had no history of leaving abruptly, and no personal conflicts appeared severe enough to prompt voluntary disappearance. There was a sense of precision here, Hall recalled years later. This wasn't impulsive. Someone had planned Kristil's removal. Early interviews focused on Kristil's professional and social life. A coworker mentioned a recent disagreement with a new staff member, Ethan Riley, over funding allocations. Another hinted at an unknown client who had been unusually insistent about documentation for a grant. While each lead was minor, Hall noted the pattern. Every person close to Kristil mentioned someone who had interacted with her recently, someone who might have observed her routines. The investigation revealed no immediate evidence of physical struggle at her apartment, and neighbors reported seeing nothing unusual, reinforcing the theory that Kristil's disappearance had been carefully staged. By the third day, the investigation had intensified. Police canvassed the area, searching surveillance footage from nearby stores and parking garages. They found partial evidence of a black sedan seen lingering near Kristil's nonprofit office the day of her disappearance. Descriptions were vague, and no license plate was obtained, but the pattern suggested someone familiar with her schedule had orchestrated her abduction. Hall began constructing a timeline, noting the precise moments Kristil was last seen and the gaps in recorded sightings. It was painstaking work, made more difficult by the lack of physical evidence and the deliberate nature of her disappearance. Forensic experts examined Kristil's office and apartment. No signs of forced entry were found, but subtle clues emerged. A faint smudge on the door frame, traces of fiber on her desk chair, and the removal of her laptop bag. Investigators speculated that someone close to her, with knowledge of her routines and surroundings, had taken these precautions to avoid leaving detectable evidence. "It's almost like the person had rehearsed every step," said forensic analyst Jenna Morales. Every trace was minimized, almost invisible to the casual observer. Days stretched into weeks. Kristil's family and friends organized searches, posted flyers, and contacted media outlets. The community of Madison, already familiar with missing person cases, became alert and anxious. Local news featured her disappearance prominently, highlighting her nonprofit work and appealing for witnesses. Tips flooded in daily, most leading nowhere. Detectives worked tirelessly, cross-referencing leads, interviewing known associates, and reviewing every minor clue that emerged. It was during the second week of the investigation that Detective Hall noticed a connection he hadn't initially considered. In reviewing emails and phone records from Kristil's last days, Hall discovered repeated, cryptic messages from an unknown number. The content was vague, but appeared insistent, requesting meetings under various pretenses. The timing of these messages corresponded with periods when Kristil was last seen. Hall theorized that these communications could be the lure used to isolate her from her normal routines, a classic setup. Meanwhile, the family grappled with fear and frustration. Megan stayed by the investigation's side, determined to uncover what had happened to her sister. She coordinated with law enforcement, provided personal insights into Kristil's recent interactions, and helped verify alibis for people close to Kristil. Every conversation, every memory, was scrutinized for relevance. The family's persistence mirrored the dedication of the detectives, their shared goal singular: find Kristil alive, if possible, or discover the truth behind her disappearance. By the third week, an unexpected breakthrough emerged. Police received a tip about Ethan Riley, the staff member mentioned earlier. He had abruptly quit work shortly before Kristil disappeared, citing personal reasons. Investigators discovered that Riley had recently purchased a black sedan matching the description given by witnesses near Kristil's office. His digital footprint, online activity, cell phone location data, and financial transactions showed unusual patterns coinciding with the disappearance timeline. "We had a suspect who wasn't just familiar with Kristil," Hall explained. "He had opportunity, motive, and the means to execute a carefully planned abduction." The next step was to obtain sufficient evidence to bring Riley into custody. Surveillance teams monitored his movements, tracking interactions, and looking for potential leads. Investigators also analyzed his home and vehicle for any trace evidence linking him to Kristil. It was meticulous work, conducted under the pressure of a growing media spotlight and a family desperate for answers. "We couldn't rush," Hall emphasized. The stakes were high, and one mistake could allow him to vanish without accountability. After nearly a month of careful observation and analysis, police executed a controlled search warrant on Riley's residence. In a locked, concealed storage unit in the basement, they found a collection of items confirming suspicions: Kristil's laptop bag, personal belongings, and other evidence indicating she had been forcibly taken. DNA testing on these items would later provide irrefutable proof linking Riley to the abduction. The community, once on edge and filled with uncertainty, felt a sudden mixture of fear and outrage. Someone so close to Kristil, someone whose motives appeared rooted in envy and personal grievance, had orchestrated her disappearance from the very people who trusted him. Detective Hall recalled the moment the evidence was confirmed. It was like all the scattered pieces finally came together. We knew who had done this, and we had the proof to hold him accountable. The relief was immediate, but it was tempered by the reality of Kristil's fate, which remained unknown. The story of Kristil Krug, the young woman dedicated to helping others, had taken a dark turn. Her abduction wasn't random. It was deliberate, calculated, and meticulously executed. Those who knew her described her as kind, vibrant, and dedicated, qualities that tragically made her an unwitting target. The discovery of Riley's involvement marked the first real hope that answers, long withheld by circumstances and deception, would finally be revealed. The discovery of Kristil's belongings in Riley's basement storage unit electrified the investigation. Detective Marcus Hall knew the evidence was crucial, but it also came with a chilling implication. Kristil had been held against her will, and every day she remained missing added weight to the possibility that she might never be found alive. Forensic teams immediately processed the items, cataloging each trace of DNA, fiber, and fingerprint. It was painstaking work, but every microscopic detail could bring clarity to the mystery that had shrouded Kristil's life for nearly a month. Riley's background revealed a carefully constructed facade of normalcy. a 32-year-old man who worked as a logistics coordinator at a regional shipping company. He was considered competent, mild-mannered, and quietly ambitious by colleagues. Neighbors described him as polite, even helpful, always ready to carry packages for elderly residents or shovel snow in the winter. No one imagined that behind his ordinary exterior lay a calculated predator, someone who had been planning Kristil's abduction with meticulous precision. Interviews with family and friends painted a portrait of Kristil as devoted and cautious. She had no known enemies, no history of risky behavior, and no secret conflicts that could explain her disappearance. That made Riley's betrayal all the more unsettling. Hall noted in his journal, "The danger was always close. Kristil trusted people implicitly, and that trust was used against her. It's a reminder that evil can wear the most ordinary faces." Police began reconstructing Kristil's final movements. Security camera footage from the community center confirmed that she had left her office around 3:45 p.m., heading toward her vehicle. Witnesses in the area recalled a black sedan following closely behind. Hall's team theorized that Riley had observed her daily routine for weeks, learning the precise timing to intercept her with minimal risk of detection. Every step in his plan had been deliberate, every detail rehearsed until it seemed effortless. The search for Kristil escalated as the days passed. Local authorities, volunteers, and even neighboring counties joined in coordinated efforts. Flyers featuring her smiling face were plastered across Madison. Social media campaigns amplified the search, sharing her story with thousands of people beyond the city. As hope flickered, Detective Hall knew the next steps had to be decisive. Riley could not remain free. Every delay increased the chance that crucial evidence, or worse, Kristil herself, could be lost forever. Riley's behavior under surveillance revealed subtle signs of unease. He left his apartment infrequently, avoiding public spaces, and frequently removed items from his home under the guise of errands. While initially interpreted as typical caution, Hall's team recognized the pattern. The movements correlated with periods when Kristil's last known location was under investigation. It became clear that Riley had tried to isolate himself, perhaps out of fear that law enforcement was closing in. On the 12th day of the search, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source: a utility worker performing routine maintenance near Riley's residence. He noticed a vent slightly ajar in the basement section of Riley's house, a space that, when investigated, revealed signs of recent habitation that did not match Riley's known routine. Investigators entered with caution, discovering makeshift bedding, discarded food containers, and, chillingly, Kristil's personal items. The discovery confirmed that Riley had been holding her captive, inside the very home that neighbors had always thought safe. Forensic experts took immediate action. DNA samples from bedding and personal effects matched Kristil's profile. Fibers and fingerprints corroborated her presence in the concealed area of the basement. Hall recalled, "It was both a relief and a horror. Relief because we knew she had been alive at least until recently. Horror because of the realization that she had been so close, in a space controlled entirely by someone she knew." Meanwhile, Riley's colleagues and acquaintances were being interviewed extensively. The team discovered that he had financial grievances with Kristil regarding the nonprofit's grant allocations, minor but sufficient to fuel resentment. Investigators speculated that a combination of personal envy, perceived slights, and a desire for control had driven Riley to meticulously orchestrate her abduction. While motive could never justify action, it explained why someone with a seemingly ordinary life could commit such a heinous act. As the investigation progressed, Detective Hall grew concerned about Kristil's physical and mental state. She had been isolated, deprived of freedom, and forced to endure a confined space with minimal care. Psychologists consulted on the case suggested that prolonged captivity could cause disorientation, panic, and extreme stress. Hall coordinated with crisis negotiators, hoping to establish some form of communication if Riley could be induced to cooperate. Every moment was critical. The longer Kristil remained in isolation, the higher the risk to her life. Surveillance of Riley's movements intensified. Police monitored phone lines, internet usage, and visitors. Each observation provided subtle clues: items brought into the home at odd hours, quick departures, and a nervous routine that suggested the suspect was aware the net was closing in. Hall understood that timing was crucial. The operation had to be executed with precision to prevent Kristil from being harmed in the final moments of captivity. 2 weeks into the investigation, the team uncovered digital evidence confirming Riley's communications with Kristil during her last days. Texts, emails, and intercepted calls revealed attempts to manipulate and control her, reinforcing the theory that the abduction was premeditated. It was clear that he had created a system of isolation, monitoring her movements and exerting power over her environment. The evidence was chilling in its clarity. Every step had been designed to ensure no one could intervene. Then came the operation. At dawn on the 16th day of the search, Madison police executed a coordinated raid. Officers entered Riley's home with tactical precision, surrounding every exit and securing the interior. In a concealed section of the basement, Kristil was found alive, frightened but unharmed. She was disoriented, exhausted, and traumatized, yet physically intact. Immediate medical attention was provided, and she was escorted safely out of the home. The community reacted with shock, relief, and disbelief. News outlets broadcast images of officers emerging from Riley's home, and Kristil, safely in an ambulance, being attended to by paramedics. Citizens struggled to reconcile the horror of her abduction with the knowledge that someone they knew, someone trusted, had orchestrated it. Riley's facade crumbled rapidly under questioning. Faced with mounting evidence, DNA, digital communication, witness statements, and physical discovery, he confessed to the abduction, attempting to rationalize his actions with grievances that no one could accept as justification. Psychologists called in to evaluate Riley described him as meticulous, controlling, and opportunistic, a person who could plan a crime with chilling clarity while maintaining an ordinary exterior. This wasn't a moment of passion or chaos, said Dr. Elaine Simmons, a forensic psychologist. It was deliberate, calculated, and maintained over weeks, demonstrating an unsettling ability to compartmentalize and manipulate. In the days following Kristil's rescue, the nonprofit community rallied around her. She was debriefed extensively, offered counseling, and supported by friends, family, and coworkers. The media coverage highlighted both the danger and resilience of the human spirit, the horror of abduction juxtaposed against the courage and survival of the victim. Detective Hall emphasized that while Kristil was physically unharmed, the psychological toll would take time to heal. Finally, legal proceedings began. Riley was charged with kidnapping, unlawful confinement, and multiple counts of intimidation and assault. The evidence was overwhelming, and the plea deal eventually included full acknowledgement of his crimes in exchange for a sentence that would ensure he could never endanger another individual. Kristil, although traumatized, spoke publicly about her gratitude for the swift and effective response of law enforcement, emphasizing the importance of awareness, vigilance, and community cooperation in preventing similar tragedies. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment below if you want to follow more cold case resolutions. Your engagement helps us keep these stories alive and ensures victims' stories are remembered. The days following Kristil's rescue were tense. The community of Madison struggled to reconcile the shocking truth. A man they knew, worked alongside, and trusted had orchestrated a terrifying crime right under their noses. Friends and neighbors expressed disbelief. How could someone so unassuming, so ordinary, commit such a meticulously planned act? Questions and whispers filled the streets, but one thing became crystal clear: the justice system had to act decisively. Kristil's medical and psychological evaluations were thorough. Doctors confirmed that physically she was unharmed, but her mental state required immediate attention. Sleep disturbances, hypervigilance, and anxiety were natural consequences of being confined, isolated, and manipulated for days. Trauma therapists emphasized that while her body had survived, her mind had endured an ordeal that would require weeks, perhaps months, of careful support. Kristil herself was resilient. She insisted on participating in the investigation, cooperating fully with detectives, providing details only she could know, including how Riley had managed her confinement, the threats he made, and subtle routines he enforced to keep her compliant. Detective Marcus Hall and his team moved swiftly to build the case against Riley. The foundation was solid. Physical evidence from the basement, digital communications, eyewitness accounts, and Riley's own erratic behavior under surveillance. Each piece of evidence, no matter how minor, contributed to a picture of premeditation and calculated cruelty. Prosecutors described Riley as someone who had studied and manipulated his victim, exploiting trust and knowledge of her routine to isolate and control her. During interrogation, Riley's demeanor shifted between defiance and resignation. Initially, he attempted to downplay the severity of his actions, framing the abduction as a misunderstanding or a miscalculation. But as the weight of forensic evidence, Kristil's testimony and eyewitness statements mounted, his facade cracked. The reality was unavoidable. Every strategy, every move, every minute detail of his plan had been meticulously recorded in the case file, waiting to confront him. In court, the emotional stakes were immense. The courtroom overflowed with law enforcement officers, community members, Kristil's friends, and journalists. Cameras captured the tension as Riley entered, a man once considered unremarkable now the center of a national conversation about abduction, trust, and criminal psychology. Kristil, seated a few rows from the front, appeared composed but visibly affected. The months of trauma were palpable, yet her courage shone. She was the voice of resilience, the living testament to surviving calculated evil. The prosecution laid out the timeline with precision. Riley's observation of Kristil, the careful planning, the abduction, the containment in the basement, and the attempts to control her environment. Physical evidence was presented in detail, bedding fibers matching Kristil's clothing, fingerprints on key items, and the personal effects discovered in Riley's storage unit. Forensic experts testified about the DNA evidence confirming her presence in the basement. Each testimony added a layer of clarity, painting a vivid picture of the harrowing experience she had endured. Psychologists offered expert insight into Riley's behavior. Dr. Elaine Simmons explained, Riley displayed characteristics consistent with high-functioning manipulative offenders. He was able to compartmentalize his public life, work, neighbors, friends, while conducting a criminal operation in private. This level of premeditation is chilling because it demonstrates awareness, planning, and emotional detachment. The courtroom audience shivered at the implication that someone could function normally in society while harboring such darkness. The defense attempted to introduce mitigating factors, citing Riley's background, past employment, and personal struggles. But the evidence of deliberate action, coupled with the victim's detailed account, left little room for argument. The jury deliberated for hours, weighed down by the gravity of the crime and the overwhelming evidence of planning and control. Finally, the verdict came. Riley was convicted on all counts: kidnapping, unlawful confinement, assault, and multiple counts of intimidation. The judge delivered a sentence that would ensure he could never harm another individual, life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. As the sentence was read, the courtroom remained silent, punctuated only by the sound of a gavel hitting the bench. Justice, delayed but resolute, had been served. Outside the courthouse, Kristil addressed reporters with measured composure. Her voice, steady despite the emotional weight, conveyed both relief and the resolve to move forward. "This experience has changed me forever," she said, "but I hope it also reminds everyone to remain vigilant and to trust their instincts. Evil can hide behind ordinary faces, but awareness and courage can make a difference." I am grateful for the law enforcement officers, my family, and my community who never gave up searching for me. Her words resonated with viewers, inspiring a mixture of empathy, admiration, and awareness. In the weeks following Riley's conviction, Kristil worked to rebuild her life. Therapy sessions helped her process the trauma and regain confidence in her surroundings. Friends and family created a network of support, ensuring she felt safe and understood. Kristil returned to her nonprofit work, determined to continue the mission she had started before her abduction, now with a renewed perspective on vulnerability, safety, and resilience. The case also sparked broader discussion about abduction prevention, public awareness, and psychological profiling. Law enforcement agencies across the state revisited cold cases, examining similar patterns of behavior in suspects with ordinary appearances and community trust. Kristil's story became part of training programs, illustrating how careful observation, forensic diligence, and prompt response can save lives. For Detective Hall, the case remained one of the most intense of his career. He recalled the mixture of fear and hope during those critical days. We were racing against time, knowing that every hour counted. The relief when Kristil was found alive is something I will never forget. It's why we do this work, why we dedicate ourselves to protecting the vulnerable. His words reflected the unspoken truth. The system's success depends on relentless human effort, dedication, and courage. Months later, Kristil participated in public speaking engagements, sharing her story to inspire, educate, and prevent future abductions. Her experience became a cautionary tale, highlighting the importance of vigilance, community support, and trust in law enforcement. Each audience left with a heightened sense of awareness and the sobering realization that danger can hide in ordinary places, but resilience and courage can triumph over even the darkest circumstances. Riley remains in prison, a constant reminder of how calculated evil can blend seamlessly with the ordinary. His life, once mundane and unremarkable, now serves as an example in criminal psychology courses and law enforcement training. Students and officers alike study his methods, understanding the critical intersection of premeditation, opportunity, and human vulnerability. Kristil's journey, in contrast, embodies survival, resilience, and the reclaiming of agency. She is living proof that even in situations designed to strip away freedom and instill terror, the human spirit can endure. Her advocacy work continues to shed light on abductions, cold case investigations, and the subtle ways perpetrators manipulate trust. As the story closes, Madison reflects on the lessons learned. Community awareness increased, law enforcement resources expanded, and families spoke openly about safety measures. Kristil's experience, though terrifying, left a legacy of vigilance, empowerment, and the enduring capacity for justice to prevail, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. For viewers who followed Kristil Krug's story from her disappearance to her rescue and Riley's arrest, the message is clear. Vigilance, courage, and relentless investigation can overcome even meticulously planned evil. And while the scars of trauma remain, they can coexist with survival, advocacy, and the restoration of trust in community and justice.